Martin, is the legal rep Louise Gallagher?
No, it's Genevieve Woods. She was in the meeting earlier. I'm just trying to send her a message.
Okay.
Right, so we're live now. So are we able to start without the
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we'll just give it another few minutes.
Martin, is the legal rep Louise Gallagher?
No, it's Genevieve Woods. She was in the meeting earlier. I'm just trying to send her a message. Yeah, I've just done that as well.
Right, so we're live now. So are we able to start without the
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we'll just give...
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, yeah. I dropped out there, and I'm now hearing things I heard just before I dropped out. That's a bit concerning.
I think that's the live stream. It's got a bit of a lag, actually, so don't worry.
Okay.
We're just waiting for the legal representative from the Met Police who dropped out as well. Should hopefully rejoin us shortly, and then we can begin. Have you any news, any update, Martin?
No, I've not had anything back from her.
Okay.
Hello, is that Genevieve?
Hello, I'm so sorry. I do apologise, councillors. It appears my application crashed.
Okay. Okay, Chairman, are we now okay to start the meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. My name is Martin Newton from Democratic Services. The subcommittee today is made up of Councillors Gander, Ryder, Mills and Sweeney. Item 1 is the appointment of a chair for the meeting. May I ask subcommittee members to nominate a chair for the meeting?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Sweeney, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And is that approved?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney in the chair.
Okay, thank you. As we know, this meeting is being broadcast live on the council's YouTube channel, and the recording will be available shortly after the meeting. An agenda is available to view on the council's website by following the links to your council, democracy and elections, and decision-making committee. So it's a sub-licensing committee. We need 3 councillors for this meeting, need to be present at all times during the meeting to ensure we are able to make a decision on the licensing application. In the event that any subcommittee members or the legal advisor loses connection during the hearing, we will pause we will pause to allow them to rejoin as soon as possible. And also to help reduce feedback, can I ask everyone joining by video to mute their microphone when they are not speaking? And that is pressing Control and D at the same time, mutes and unmutes your microphone. After the subcommittee has heard each submission, I will ask members if they have any questions on the submission. Members can also indicate that they wish to speak by using the meeting chat function. Do not use the chat function to ask questions of officers or councillors, and remember that all meeting participants on the video call will be able to see what has been entered into chat. Please also ensure that your mobile phones are switched off or in silent mode during the meeting. I will now introduce the other participants in the meeting. Councillor Gander, present.
Hello, good morning.
Councillor Ryder Mills.
Good morning.
Guy Beaumont, Legal Advisor.
Good morning.
Becky Welton, Licensing Officer.
Good morning.
Fiona Cotter from Democratic Services.
Good morning.
Okay. And on behalf of the applicant, do we have Suresh Kanapathy?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. And we have the applicant also, Damotharama Pillai Sathyanamurthy.
Good morning.
Good morning. On behalf of the Environment Service, do we have Richard O'Dell?
Good morning, Councillor.
And Public Health, Louise Gallagher?
Yes, good morning.
And on the behalf of the Metro Police, do we have PC Lee Hopkins?
Yes, good morning.
And Genevieve Woods, on behalf of the Met Police as well.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, right. Remember the mute by Control D. Sorry, I hear some shuffling. Does any member of the subcommittee have a personal or pecuniary interest to declare? No pecuniary personal interest has been declared. Okay. The parties have been notified of the usual procedures for licensing hearings as set out on pages 4 to 6 of the agenda. And paragraph 55 on page 5 deals with the notification of the decision following the subcommittee's deliberations. I would like to confirm that during the period that these hearings are held remotely, the decision will be confirmed by email later in the day to avoid participants having to wait online whilst the subcommittee reached its decision. Are there any objections to proceeding on the basis of those procedures? Good. Okay. This hearing is regarding the Laxmi of 90 Tolworth Broadway, Surbiton, KT6 7HT. I now call on Becky Welton, the licensing officer, to introduce the report on the application.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, the application relates to Laxmi at 90 Tolworth Broadway and was made on the 2nd of April. The application seeks to vary an existing premises licence by extending the hours during which alcohol can be sold on Sundays from 10 AM to midnight, removal of seasonal restrictions and variations in relation to Christmas Day, Good Friday and New Year's Eve, the addition of the provision of recorded music from 11 PM to midnight daily, the addition of the provision of late night refreshment from 11 PM to midnight daily, the amendment of opening hours so that the premises may open from 6 AM to midnight every day, and the replacement of all conditions with a new operating schedule. The current and proposed hours of operation are laid out for you at Annex 3, and there is a copy of the full application form and the current premises licence at Annexes 1 and 2. I can confirm that the applicant advertised the application by way of public notice displayed at the premises and in a local newspaper. We also made the application available on the council's website. All responsible authorities received a copy of the application. The Metropolitan Police as responsible authority for the prevention of crime and disorder, Environmental Protection Officer as responsible authority for the prevention of public nuisance, Trading Standards Officer as responsible authority for the protection of children from harm, and Director of Public Health raised concerns regarding the application. Following further consultation, the applicant has managed to address the concerns of the Trading Standards Officer by making amendments to their operating schedule, and these amendments are reflected in the conditions shown at Annex 4. These agreements do not affect the representations of the other 3 responsible authorities which stand. In accordance with the Council's licensing policy, 461 addresses were consulted in writing and informed that an application had been received, and 1 valid representation was received from other parties. That representation makes reference to matters that relate to the prevention of public nuisance and prevention of crime and disorder licensing objectives, and is included for your information at Annex 6. To assist you in making your decision, there is a map showing the approximate location of the premises at Annex 7 with some photographs at Annex 8. In considering the report, the subcommittee is required to take into account the Secretary of State's guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act and our licensing policy, as well as the 4 licensing objectives. You are asked to determine the application having regard to the representations received and any evidence heard at this morning's hearing in accordance with the options set out for you at paragraph 11. And I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gander, do you have any questions for Officer Welton?
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware that there was a previous application. Can I ask about the previous application and how it differs from this one?
Yes, so an application was made last year, again, to vary the premises licence. That application sought, again, removal of the condition restricting the sale of alcohol with food, but was also seeking substantially longer hours from what this current application is seeking. I think that's the difference in the main. I don't have the full application that was made last year in front of me, but the main differences are the hours that were sought previously. It's a much shorter in terms of extension of hours this time, but obviously there are other elements of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Gander?
Not for the moment, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Ryder-Mills, do you have any questions?
Just one further to Councillor Gander's, I think. Is there any sort of norm to the hours in the area with which this concurs, or do hours vary considerably?
So there isn't a standard set of hours, and our licensing policy doesn't suggest doesn't contain any guideline hours. Tolworth Broadway is quite varied in terms of the type and style of premises. We have a number of late night refreshment premises, the Broadway bar, which is directly opposite, and a number of off licenses and other small premises, but there is no standardised hours, so to speak, in the area.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Ryder-Mills?
Yeah, I understood that the Broadway bar is not operational at the moment. Is that correct? And is it expected to become operational again?
The premises licence is still active. The annual fee has been paid, but at the moment the premises is empty. It's been empty for approximately 5 months.
And no news as to when it might reopen?
Not as yet. As I say, the premises licence is still paid up to date and active, so hypothetically, coronavirus regulations aside, it could reopen at any point.
Thank you.
One question from me, Officer Welton. Could you just repeat I didn't quite hear it. You sent out how many notices about the application and how many responses did you receive back?
We sent out notices of the application to 461 addresses, and of those 461 addresses, we received 1 representation from other parties.
So that would be a resident. Yeah.
Yes, and that's contained at Annex 6 of your agenda.
Okay, thank you. Right. I don't think we have any more questions now. So I now call on the applicant Mr. Kanapathy and Mr. Satyamurthy to give a summary of the application. So over to the applicants now. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Also, you said the summary of the application, or can I address the objections as well from the authority? Can you hear me okay?
Councillor Sweeney, you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, yeah, there was a little bit of background noise there. Could you repeat that question?
I will give you the summary of the application.
Yeah.
So I will address the points raised by the objectors, the authorities. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just keep brief as brief as possible. So let me quickly give you a little brief introduction to the owner of this business. So this business has been running over 3 years now. The person who owned this business, he had a restaurant in Paris, in France, and he sold it. And then he invested this was a restaurant for, very, very long time. So he invested renovated, spending over £200,000 in this business. So now this business is prominently food business. It's a restaurant and is Sri Lankan and Indian food. And also, they invested so much money, put up nice, the bar inside, and all the fittings are really highly expensive. All the machineries are really high quality as well. But just to coming back to this application, Chair, so the hours are not being extended. There are a few, only on Sunday hours it's been extended. So the premises already had a license up to midnight. So just wanted to, address the points raised by the authorities. So I've been just looking at the representation by the Environmental Health Officer, Richard Odell. So he said it's a similar application, but I would say it's not similar. Is the application done by a new manager or new management, a new person, and at the same time, the hours are totally different. So, so I think I wouldn't look at this application comparing to the previous applications. But now, we have issued a number of tents. So there was one incident mentioned here, Chair, is very important. They said about with chairs from the restaurant being thrown into the road. There were at least 10 people and it was very loud and disruptive. This is reported by the same resident who put the representation. So, Chair, I think, it is totally unfair to put this incident into this report or really associating this incident with the premises, because those people who made, do the fighting or whatever was not, they were not the customers of this premises and they were not into the premises. There were two groups of people kind of, arguing and, using whatever they find. It's not in their premises it started from somewhere else. So, these front premises were part of it, So I think they then disturb themselves, they run away anyway. But I think it is really unfair to look at this incident with this application to these premises. And so that's one of the things I wanted to point out, Chair. And I think, I'm really surprised Richard Odell, commenting to refuse these applications. I think, based on this one incident happens, nothing to do with these premises, pointing that out is not fair, I think. And also he mentioned, this is the town center, Chair. We can't really call this a residential area. It's a town center, high street. I think the authorities are really mentioning it. It's a very busy street. The buses and the cars are going all the time, beeping all the time. People park. There are so many other premises. And also just wanted to point out, Chair, I think it's important to point it out, to, about this one residence making a complaint constantly, and the new manager, who took over in January, he went down and talked to all the other premises and other residences as well. And they were all happy. And they said, we didn't have much problem with your place, and also, there are evidence, there are a few, incidents happen, but the thing is, it's not like, everyday problems in that, and what I wanted to point out about this residence, and when they were talking with the other premises, and they said the booths opposite, Chair, I'm just putting this to the public record, and they said, this residents coming and complain to us all the time, we are disruptive. We are like, their delivery vans is making so much noise. The customers making so much noise to the premises right opposite the premises. I think it's, I think that's why, I want to really, leave to the committee to assess, the one resident's complaints, fairly. And also, so one of the other thing, Chair, I think one of the fair points, obviously, it is about the management. So whether there are three things been identified, could be the problem associated with the premises. So one of them is a loud music and no, and having a private parties and smokers outside, right? So Chair, I think there were no parties happening. I think the residents also writing to mention about those things, like at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. There might be people making, noises, but it's nothing to do with this premises. We have 11 tents applied by, it's mentioned by the authorities, and it's all went brilliantly. There were no really particular complaint except, the incident I mentioned, so now, if you think about complaints, I think, I'm really not happy. The authority, the Richard, the environmental health officer said it's a history of complaints. When you really look at it, it's only one residence just above the premises, making these complaints a few times, and it is totally unfair to, using a word like a history of complaints, and obviously in terms of management, we have put new management into this place to address this matter. So I will let the applicant to tell you what the system in place to address the noise and smokers and any dispersal policy as well. So I just wanted to say a few points about the police representations. And the police said, the conditions. Chair, let me tell you, I think there are a number of people live locally. They come and they sit down, they do their work. They come with a laptop. Sometime after they finish the work, they want to have to find a beer and go. That's where we are coming. It's not a bar, and it is difficult. There are hundreds and hundreds of restaurant premises in UK without having a conditions of food and alcohol only to be served. So, I think these premises, have a tents, they didn't have any problems. So, and also, the alcohol hours is only on Sundays. I think it's, we wanted to have like a whole 7 days, same hours. I think it hasn't been a problem on Sundays. And also when it comes to recorded music, Chair, we are just talking about a background music. We are not talking about having a dance floor. There's no dance floor or people not going to stand. It's all been seated. The restaurant is got up to 80 seats. And the maximum, if you think about a busy day for that premises, the very busy day happened a few times, the maximum they had about 50 people. That's it. That is the maximum they had, So now, the police said, about late night refreshment, Chair, is we put this in the applications. It is to help because, we are not a bar because we want to sell, food at the same time the alcohol is available. So until midnight, we will be keep serving food. That's one of the ways they are managing the premises, providing food, and opening hours, Chair. We had until midnight before, and then now we got extra half an hour it is to manage, is kind of a part of the dispersal policy, so they can manage people, without causing so much noise, leaving it at the same times, they have extra half an hour, like at ringing up times, I think the police questioning about upholding the licensing objectives, Chair, I think, also there are, I'm not justifying all that happened previous, person who is managing the premises, but Chair, I think, there were a number of times they provided CCTV. It's not part of the conditions, but they had 14 days recording system. That's what they had, a CCTV system with the 14 days records. So one time with the chair incidents, the police, I was there as well. The police asked for a CCTV, and then I had a chat with the police officer and another officer, and we talked to them about this application. They said they are happy to remove, that conditions, but but put some over a period, put some tents, to prove that there's no problems, and then we will consider it. They agreed to it. Right, but right now they're coming and then saying, they are not, want to oppose the applications because, they wanted to see another 6 months. I think that is not fair considering the situations, and right now, Chair, they have a new CCTV system recording 31 days. But if you look at this application, Chair, really, this application is going to be promoting the licensing objectives as opposed to the existing license, because existing license don't have any conditions, because that is, issued on the previous licensing act, before 2003. So a number of things, you can see those, things. I think the new license, we put so many conditions about the CCTV, and at the same times, we put something about, on the application about handling the noise as well, So right now, Chair, I think the way I see these applications, although the authority is trying to paint a different picture, not really considering the business at the same time, just considering more about this one particular residence, So we got to get a balance, Chair, I think I just wanted to get this applicant to tell you the new system he has to address those issues that's been raised. So do you want to tell about you want to tell about the noise, how are you going to manage the noise?
The noise, we're going to manage it, the music, volume down.
So they have a news management plans. So that address, how are you going to manage, you need to be a bit loud, right?
Yeah, we can put the music volume down and close the window and doors shut. Make sure that, and all the customer sit and relax, don't stand up anything. And also the smoking problem, I explained the staff already. Well, at the time, 3 or 2 people, they can go for the smoking outside. We had to make sure everything that from the staff. We normally have 3 people on the floor. And other one of the
rubbish. Yeah, those are the things. And the dispersal policy?
Dispersal policy, yeah.
Okay, Chair, I just want to clarify, so this noise management system, how they're going to manage the noise. Also, it's not a nightclub, not a DJ, still the recorded music, how they are going to manage it, right? So they're going to be keeping the volume down and having customers sitting down, as opposed to standing and talking, and having 3 staff, including him, they have 3 staff on the floor all the time. And you're going to put 1 person in charge of managing those, customers every time. Okay, so those are the things. And other things is complaints. They have complaint recording system. And if you look at it, Chair, even with this one residence, they had a very good relationship. You can see the residents said that on the representation. They've been talking to them, all the time, having a communications. So, every time she complained, they're right to address it. And they had, it's been difficult for the business, I have to say that. But, that's, they've been doing something to address the concern. It's not like ignoring it. They had a very good relationship with all the residents. You can see from the representation. But if you want to tell about the dispersal policy, Chair, I think I probably lead the dispersal policy he has implemented in the system. So, they have no customers leave the premises with the drinks, so ensure that no customers leave the premises with their drinks, no drinks allowed outside at any time, like taking it away from the premises. So one staff will be managing that, all the time and every time. And they also have provided telephone details and night bus details to the customers. And they are allowing an extra time, extra half an hour ringing up times, so that, that will damage dispersal policy. And also, if customers are congregating outside the premises at closing time or any given night, they ask, one of the staff will manage them, ask them to leave, so that, they have a sign outside on the window as well already. So they will point that out and they ask them to leave and let them go. Okay. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you. So remember, you will have a chance to make a summary at the end of this once we've heard from all of the responsible authorities. So I will ask if Councillor Gander, do you have any questions for the applicants?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. I wanted to know a little bit, you mentioned a couple of things, one about new management. So is it a different management than when the previous application was made? And just a little bit more about the experience of that management in running this kind of establishment. That would be my first question. And then I have a second question. I may have a follow-on question, Chair, but for the moment, the second question is, I'm a little bit confused about restaurant, bar, restaurant, because in your submission just now, you were talking about it's still a restaurant, and yet the application seems to be around giving people the opportunity to drink and not eat. So I just wanted to know really how you saw that working. Is it sort of different times of the day? Is it later on that it becomes more of a bar than a restaurant? Yes, it's just a little bit of clarification around that, please.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to get, can you tell about your experience?
Yeah.
He's, tell you about it.
I'm used to working at Palmera restaurant on Nochim for 5 years in my management. So that restaurant is closed now. So I'm just joining on here from the January on here. It's in Sutton Council.
And you want to tell about the customers and
Yeah, I'm living this place in locally for nearly 5 years. I know the customer and everything.
And also your Palmera restaurant.
Yeah.
What kind of food have you been selling out for?
We've been selling alcohol without any condition on the license in Palmera, the restaurant. I'm running on the 5 years on the management.
And then you manage it effectively?
Yeah, I manage it.
Yeah. So you've been a DPS there?
Yeah. I'm a DPS there also.
Yeah. It's called Palmera.
Could you summarize that for us? That you're talking about another restaurant, are you?
Yeah, I'm used to be working running the restaurant on the management.
It's a previous experience, Chair.
Yeah, it's difficult to hear. What is that experience? Could you summarize it, please?
Yeah.
So 5 years. It's a restaurant called Palmera on North Team.
Okay.
They didn't have a conditions like food and alcohol only. There are people coming to drink alcohol, and they have premises above, residents above the premises, and he is managing effectively. You had a separate room there. He was telling me they have a separate room like a private parties, and people come and drink only as well. Sometimes for a getting together, right, having like a games as well. So he managed it effectively for 5 years. So I think that is the experience. Just to coming back to why we wanted to remove these conditions, Chair. I think the council asked good questions. Is it a bar or restaurant? Or bar is a restaurant or is a bar and restaurant? But historically, this premises is going to be a restaurant. There's no question about it, because that's how it's been set up You know, there are chairs around. They're not going to be a bar. You know, the food is their business, right? So right now, you know, with these conditions, there are local people living there. They just wanted to have a social time. You know, Chair, you know, the councillor, you know, what I wanted to say to you, you know, if these premises, if they can't drink, you know, what's the other option for them? You know, there are 4 or 5 off licenses around that area. So they might be buying it and drinking. I mean, obviously these customers don't do that, but that could be another option, you know, like buying an alcohol from the off license, sitting down outside on the bench, maybe drinking, you know. So I think, you know, if we really look at this premises is really supporting the licensing objective areas. Also, you know, making the people happy. You know, this is the business we are talking about. The business is all about, you know, obviously promoting the licensing objectives. At the same time, you know, satisfying the customer needs. You know, if somebody come and do want, you know, 3 or 4 people coming together, do some work and have a beer, and then we say, no, you must provide a food, you know, which is really a hard thing for them to do it, you know.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Gander, do you have any follow-up question?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ryder Mills, do you have any questions?
I have a couple for following on from that. I used to live in North Cheam many years ago, so I do know that area really quite well. However, my questions, firstly, the control of people in the smoking area, I understand that you're limiting it to 3 persons at any one time. How do you actually control that, and how much notice do you, I'm presuming there are no tables and chairs outside for them to sit out, so they're just standing on the footway smoking. If you could confirm that, and a bit more about how you would control the number of people out there. Secondly, if you can give me a little bit more about what confidence we can have that the control of the CCTV availability will be properly addressed in future. And the third question is, I'm interested in, you've hinted at people coming in to just have a drink because there are a few other open licensed premises in the area, and also you've hinted at people coming in to do some work and have a drink whilst they're working. Can I therefore ask what proportion of your trade you are envisaging being on food, and what proportion is in alcohol or in drinks?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you need to tell them a bit more about, excuse me,
smoking.
Smoking. How are you going to manage the smoking people outside?
That's why we train the 3 staff normally. We always trying to keep the 3 staff in the floor. Make sure we put the notice as well outside the window already. And if you want to smoke, don't make any noises. And make sure that at the time 3 people, we can say to them kindly, we can go any more people on the same time. When they're coming back, we can go again other people.
And then you're going to let the other people in. Okay. So,
and also the CCTV, we already fixed it for the 31 days on the new system. At the moment, used to we have
more about the CCTV,
and more
recording,
cameras.
how many days recording?
31 days on recording.
Yeah. And
we used to be have a 14 days. We change it now on the 31 days.
And you have USB drive. You can record it and give it to the police.
If anything happen, I can report it on the same time. I can record the CD as well for any incident.
Does incident happen? How would you manage the incident? So imagine something happens. What would you do?
I had to be reported on the same time and record the CCTV as well. I can keep it any few.
You will keep it on USB drive so that you can give it to the police. Okay, and then how much is alcohol? You want to tell about how many people coming into a restaurant to bring alcohol is working? The local customers.
Yeah, local customers sometimes coming for the meeting and stuff. Then have a meeting. They have taking some beers. Then we said.
So you have some regular customers living locally. Do you want to tell them how many and things like that?
There are about 12-15 people on local customer in upstairs. So
they come around and then everything. Yeah.
Again, it was more what percentage, I think Councillor Ryder Mills asked, was your drink sales, food sales?
you look at percentage term, how many percentage you think food and alcohol?
Is there many times that people come for the foods? A few times some will come for
So
the.
if you look at 100%,
100 to 75 come for the foods.
Okay.
25%.
Yeah. So I think that question is not clear, Chair. I think whether the business whole or just the people only coming for alcohol.
No, the whole business. So presumably you have on a your weekly takings, you have food sales and you have alcohol sales, or food sales and drink sales. So we wanted to understand roughly what your current alcohol sales were against your total sales.
I can say about 35%.
25%, yes.
35.
35. Okay. And would you expect that to increase under these new conditions?
I don't think so, because he's a regular customer. They are coming normally. So we don't have any new customers. All of them regular customer at the moment I'm seeing, because I'm starting from January lockdown now.
Okay.
Also, just wanted to point out, Chair, if I may, about the bar opposite. So the bar opposite was closed in last May. You know, although I think the officer said that, you know, it's for over 5 months, but actually it was closed in last May, and they haven't been opening. Obviously, you know, obviously they haven't had enough business to run, you know. But the thing is, since last May, you know, they mentioned about those customers coming into this place and then causing so much trouble. That is not been the case, Chair, you know.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ryder-Mills, do you have any further questions for the applicant?
No, I think that'll do. Thank you.
Okay. I have one question for you, and it's just to, can you just provide a little bit more detail in that you're thinking around the use of temporary entertainment notice, or TENS? You have used them and you have had no issues with them. Is that right, to your knowledge? From that was a suggestion made by the police that you would use those. And
thank you, Chair.
What happened yet?
Yeah, even in the police statement, it says that there were no issues with the TENS. They mentioned that. You know, let me tell you where it is.
Yeah, I read. That's why I was asking. In the police evidence, they mentioned. I think there was 2 statements about TENS in different parts of their application, and I didn't. I will be asking the police about those later. But they were saying that
looking at their representation, Chair. Excuse me 1 second, and then if you go down there, temporary event notices. So, you know, on the second page down, where the heading is temporary event notices, they said about the TENS, and then they said series of TENS has been issued on the weekends, and there was somewhere.
Yeah. They're asking, or it mentions vertical drinking. When you have these events, or when people are coming into your premises, I mean, I guess I think there's a concern about the police. Are people sitting down, or are they standing up?
They are sitting down, Chair, and also they have few chairs. You know, when the TENS was issued around the bar area, so people can come and sit there and have a pint of beer. I mean, they don't sit long time there. It's high chairs. You know, I think there's 1 or 2 customers sitting there. You know,
we don't have it now.
You don't have it now.
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah,
we just take out the chairs. We don't have a chair in front of the bar now.
Yeah, they just take it out now, so that everybody's sitting down. I think the business is focusing on the food. That's where they make more profit as well. So the focus is always on the food. But at the same time, you know, there are number of residents upstairs living, you know, who comes to, you know, have a drinks, you know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah. And it was this point, I think it's item 3 on A31. The police have said the suggested use of TENS that would see the venue operate during the summer has been ignored. What is meant by that, you think?
Chair, I think, you know, I think it's for them to, I mean, I wouldn't even look at it like a summer or window anytime, you know. They might be thinking maybe summertime, you know, are we saying summertime troublemakers coming, wintertime they don't come? I don't understand what they mean by it. But so we issue the license in order for this support this business. You know, the application is to support the current operation of the premises business, and especially servicing the customers. What the businesses are for, you know, serving the customers. You know, I think those customers coming in the winter time, they will be coming during the summertime as well. We don't expect a new customers coming during the summer times. You know, we don't see that, and they don't see that.
All right. So we'll stop there for the moment. I don't think we have any more questions from councillors. So I'm looking and I see that there are none. So we now have the comments from responsible authorities as referred to in the agenda. We have representations from trading standards officers have now been satisfied by the applicant. And there are no further representations to consider from the trading standards officer. So I now call on Richard Odell from the Environment Service to put forward his representations, which are set out on A24 and 25. And could I just remind you to go on mute if you are not about to be making a submission. Over to Richard.
Thank you, Chair. In my view, a similar application was made by the licensee in September last year. For that application, in addition to the removal of the restaurant condition, there was an extension of the operating hours to 2 AM, albeit it was modified at the hearing. The subcommittee refused the variation on the grounds of failure to uphold the public nuisance and crime and disorder licensing objectives. During the hearing, consideration was given to the possibility of running a number of tens, and if successful, further thoughts could be given to removal of the restaurant condition, providing there's no extension to the existing hours. And I think the police mentioned, and you just covered it, that it was important to extend those tens over the summertime period. And I think the reason for that was that traditionally local authorities and perhaps the complaint and the police as well do get more complaints over the summertime. And therefore it's a greater test of the ability to manage those tens. One of the areas of concern with the complaints that have been received about loud music and noise from groups of smokers outside the premises during and after licensed hours. The applicant advised that after hours, private staff parties were often held and therefore fell outside the licensing regime. There was some scepticism on whether this was actually the case, but the applicant was advised that these should cease as they are doing little to give the local authority, the residents, and the licensing employees confidence that the premises license was not being breached. Since the hearing, 11 tens have been run, 10 last year and just 1 this year. But complaints have continued to be received, including one regarding a fight outside the premises on the 9th of November 2019. And I think that the police will probably elaborate on that. There also remains some uncertainty about whether these parties are purely for staff, and I understand that further complaints have been received and continue to be investigated by the licensing team. With the removal of the restaurant condition, this is probably the crux of the application. The applicant will be able to operate exclusively as a bar should they wish to. I know they mentioned that they want to provide food, but if that condition was removed, there'd be nothing for the local authority to prevent them from just ignoring the food element at all. This may be a possibility for an operator with a first-class track record, but with a history of complaints, I can have no confidence that the licensee can successfully operate on this basis and uphold the council's licensing objectives. I note that, and I've just heard as a part of this hearing, that that there's a new manager. I have no knowledge of the ability of this new manager to successfully manage the premises. This is a new situation, maybe needs some time for us to get confidence. I therefore, on that basis, recommend the application is refused. The premises is located on the busy Tolworth Broadway, as we've heard, and it's a major arterial road for traffic heading out of and into Kingston, and during peak times, the area is busy with steady traffic flow. At rush hour, queuing traffic is commonplace, but during the late evening and into the night, this traffic flow decreases with lower flows at night. It was mentioned about whether it's a residential area. It is definitely a mixed area, but there is a high proportion of residents overlooking the commercial elements on the ground floor. The premises along Tolworth Broadway are typically a mixture of shops, cafes, restaurants and takeaways on the ground floor with residential accommodation on the first and second floors. Examining the hours of licensable activities in the local area, the Broadway Bar is the only existing bar in the nearby area, and this is located immediately opposite the premises. This premises has a license restricting sale of alcohol to midnight, Monday to Sunday. As we've heard, the bar is currently closed and has been for some time. If it is the intention of the licensee to try and seek some of the former clients from the Broadway Bar, then I think we can assume that potentially the premises could be very busy. There are no alternatives in the nearby area. The atmosphere within a bar is quite different to that of a restaurant. Noise levels can be expected to be greater, as will be the consumption of alcohol. The licensee has a history of playing loud music at volumes to cause complaints, and being unable to manage noise from staff and or customers outside, both as smokers and during dispersal. This variation application gives no information on how music volumes will be adequately controlled. They've mentioned, pointed out in their noise management plan that it will be reduced, but we don't know how that will be reduced by and how much and how that's going to be enforced. Point 12 in the operating schedule is unenforceable. In my opinion, that with the granting of this variation, there's no reason to believe that there'll be any change in the licensee's ability to manage this premises, and I recommend that it's refused on the grounds that it's likely to conflict with the Council's prevention of public nuisance licensing objective. If the committee is minded to offer some alteration to the existing licence, I am comfortable with the proposed opening hours from 6 AM. And if they're minded to fully accept the variation, I would suggest some conditions which have been mentioned in, I've highlighted in A24 and A25. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your submission. Councillor Gander, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Okay, yes, I wanted to ask about you've made quite a few references to other complaints. I'd really like to know more about the frequency when those complaints happened, what types of complaints they were. I presume you've been mainly dealing with noise complaints, but are they happening every month? Or if you can just give me a flavour, please, and what sort of times they're happening.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm afraid I don't have any specific details in front of me. This is one of a situation whereby the complaints have really been made and registered with the licensing team rather than from me, as I work in the pollution control team. So therefore, it's really picking up some comments that I've heard from licensing and looking at some of the database. So I haven't got any specific information or any dates and times. All I can say is that I think probably one of the main areas of concern has been noise of music transmitted through the premises. So when you're sharing a building, if you like, which has shared common walls and common floors between flats and any commercial interests that may be a noise source, so in this case, particularly the music from playing within the bar, it seems to me to be the case that the volume of the music has in the past and may continue to do so resonate up through the structure and therefore be a subject of complaint. And I think that's one of the concerns that I've picked up on from the complaints. I don't think specifically it's been the case whereby the music volume has extended from an external route. So therefore, I mean by that, not coming a volume of music coming out through an open door, coming up the outside and going in an open window. I think it's probably resonating through the structure of the building. So that's my main knowledge of the complaints. I am aware that there has been noise comments made by the complainant also about just, I think the difficulties managers have had, or the manager and staff have had, in trying to keep control of customers outside when they're outside the premises, whether that's been when they're smoking or whether they are departing. and that's comments picked up on by from the resident. Thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Gander?
No, I think I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Ryder-Mills, do you have questions?
I don't think I do at the moment. My concerns were similar to Councillor Gander's.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question, actually. It's in your submission. You make reference to the noise on Tolworth Broadway. People potentially under the influence of alcohol will create disturbance through raised voices, loud music played in vehicles, slamming vehicle doors, noise from waiting taxis, and general antisocial behaviour. Is that your experience of what is happening in Tolworth Broadway now, or is it a general concern?
Tolworth Broadway is a sort of a funny place, really. There are, given the size of the actual commercial area, if you like, there's very few bars, if you like, and it does tend to close down quite early. There are some late night refreshment venues, but the council's been quite good in recent years of trying to prevent any further extension to those by only having deliveries after, say, midnight, with no customers arriving, and those deliveries are done by electric scooter. So they're trying to, I think the council has been successful in trying to create a more or resident influenced environment as the noise from road traffic dies. Because I mean, there's no doubt it's a noisy old area during the day, but that does die down quite notably into late evening, and with any bar, it changes the atmosphere quite significantly, and there's no other bars there, and so you will get an increase in comings and goings. You will get an increase in people leaving the premises under the influence of alcohol. And I know it's fair to say that most people will behave reasonably, but those who don't will have an impact in their area at that time. And there will be people waiting for taxis. There will be people waiting for perhaps buses and making their way home. And so if that condition were to be removed and it could become more bar-led, then that would change that character of that area, not only the premises, but potentially change the character of that area.
Again, I mean, in that area previously, there has been a bar, the Tolworth Broadway, that has now been closed for several months. This area has changed by the fact that bar has closed and no longer operates. So I don't quite follow the logic of what you're saying.
Oh, well, the Broadway bar, I'm not aware of any history of complaints about that specific bar. It's been closed for a long time. I don't know.
But you're referring to the fact that loud music, slamming of vehicle doors, noise from waiting taxis, and general antisocial behaviour comes with having a bar in an area, and that, given that we have had a bar, not this bar, another bar in the area, all of these problems existed previously. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, those comments are in general. I can't be specific about any particular premises, but yeah, there is an increasing potential for those types of noise sources to arise with bars rather than restaurants. I have no knowledge about the Broadway bar. And funny, it was one of the few bars that I probably haven't been to and haven't had any reason to be to. I'm not saying that they were probably perfect, but it had no reason to believe that they were causing. I had no reason of any noise complaints in there. So yes, any bar has the potential. It depends upon the management of that bar whether there's a small impact or a greater impact.
But again, if I understand, the application is they will continue to operate as a restaurant but serve alcohol rather than become exclusively a bar. Do you see a difference?
I see a big difference. The problem is that we've got as an authority, we'll have no influence over how they manage their premises. They could, if you take away the restaurant condition, then there's absolutely nothing to stop the local authority. There's nothing to stop the applicant saying, we've had a change of mind, we've had a change of business plan, we decided to pull the food element. Then it could become just a bar. And there's nothing that the local authority could do short of seeking a review. And that is what we're trying to avoid, to prevent there being a problem in the first place.
Okay, I think Councillor Ryder-Mills, you have a further question?
Yes, leading on from that, I'm thinking a bit counterintuitively. Is what Mr. Odell is saying that if there were 2 or 3 bars along the length of the Broadway, the problems would be diluted, and therefore it wouldn't be as much of a problem for any one establishment? So what this licensee might be suffering from is simply that they're the only alcohol outlet available in quite an area, and therefore any complaints that there might be congregate around his premises.
I think my main concern is my lack of confidence in the licensee to manage what could become a bar. There has been a history of complaints. We do have, and there is, as I understand it, ongoing investigations, and we'll hear more about comments that the police will have about confidence. And I think that I think I'll be put in a harder position if this was a premises with a first-class record. We didn't have any noise complaints. We had good history, a good relationship, and there was perhaps a greater element of trust. And if the licensee wishes to try to demonstrate to the local authority, then I think they need to do more. I think the 10s won't run over the summer, and I think it's a relevant point. I think there were some concerns regarding one of the 10s, which I'm sure the police will elaborate on, and some other comments that the police may elaborate on. And I think that I'm just not sufficiently confident at the moment. I don't want to be in a position where I say, yes, it should be fine. And yet at the same time, we're getting complaints about, or the licensing department getting complaints about loud music and people outside. And I think that's a concern for me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have just one final question for you about, it's a general point really, but in one of your conditions, you've set out that this premises should install a sound limiting device. And you've stipulated the requirements on those. Do you know how much those cost?
There are a number of different types, depending upon how sophisticated they are and what you want of them. But I'm not entirely certain how much they cost, but we're probably looking at something in excess of £500.
Okay. And what is the benefit of that as opposed to just having a volume button?
Well, the benefit is that these noise limiting devices do work reasonably successfully, and they benefit because they fix the volume. So managers and staff, well, the manager would hold the key usually because they're secure, but staff won't be able to, perhaps sometimes under pressure from customers, if it's a good old evening, if you like, they're always under pressure to turn up the volume for their favourite music or whatever. And these devices do have the capacity to lock, if you like, the music volume to a maximum fixed level. And if we can agree that maximum fixed level, then it means that played at that level, which it can't exceed, then it should be acceptable to the residents who are potentially affected by that music. So they can be an effective tool. They're not the only tool, but they can be an effective tool.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I don't think there are any further questions for Mr. O'Dell. So we now turn to Louise Gallagher on behalf of the Director of Public Health, who's written representations. I can hear shuffling, so just remind you, Control D if you're not speaking. Whose representations are on page A26 and A27. So Louise, would you like to present your representation, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, as you can see from my representation, there have been a number of alcohol-related incidents in the area over the last year or so, which I've evidenced in my representation. Based on this, Public Health feels that the late night drinking without the restaurant condition will negatively add to the licensing objectives for the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. So based on this, I would propose that the variation should be refused. And that's it really from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gander, do you have questions for Officer Gallagher?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The evidence of incidents close to the premises troubles me a little bit, I suppose, because there could be an incident outside my house, but I wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with it. So, I mean, I suppose once there is a cumulative, you're talking about 17 reported incidents related to gun, knife and weapon within 500 metres of the premises, but I'm not sure whether that's anything to do with the premises. And then my second question would be about what evidence do we have, within public health? Of course, as an individual, I know that drinking without having food is worrying, could cause trouble. But do we know for sure that that actually makes the situation a lot worse within a premises or surrounding a premises? I can think of it as it may well be logical, but do we have any evidence of this? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I suppose coming from a public health point of view, I'm not necessarily saying that the premises is totally responsible for these incidences, but what I'm trying to say is they could possibly add to what's already going on in the area. And it certainly won't help, sort of following on from what Richard said, people coming out late at night under the influence. Also, I'm not sure about the evidence about drinking without food. Public health in Kingston, we do spend quite a lot of money on people with alcohol issues in the area. And obviously alcohol incidences, A&E admissions. So we are, we do pay towards that. So I guess what I'm trying to say from a public health point of view is that the premises will add to this potentially. I'm not saying they're going to be totally responsible.
Okay, can I come back, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, would you, and this you may not be able to comment on this, and but would you see that the change of license would attract some different clientele? Is that a pattern that has happened before?
I think that's very difficult to say. It's not. I haven't really come across this kind of application before, if I'm honest, and I haven't seen any evidence that it does attract different people. The only thing I will say is if there's nothing else in the area that is offering drinking, drinking in the evening without a meal, then obviously it will start, once the word gets around, I think it will attract people, maybe different types of people that maybe, as you say, don't want a meal and just want to sit drinking all evening. So there is the potential for that there.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Ryder-Mills, do you have questions?
Yes, how much is, yes, I do. Firstly, we've heard already before that the way in which locations of interest are reported to police and so on can inadvertently be associated with a particular premises. So the fact that you've had so many incidents within 500 meters of this premises, most of them would probably be elsewhere than these premises, I would have thought. I'd like some confirmation on that. And also, it sounds, perhaps playing devil's advocate for a bit, if there were more licensed premises, again, the problems would be diluted between them. And at the moment, you maybe have a situation where, because there are off licenses around, then some of those incidents could be associated with people buying from the off license and then drinking on the street. And those presumably fit into those the figures which are quoted by Ms. Lidlington, which again would have absolutely nothing to do with this particular premises. I'd like some confirmation on that, please.
Yes, I agree, Councillor. I can't say for definite it would be attributable to that actual premises. Unfortunately, I only have data available to me that's postcode specific, but it just gives a flavour of what's going on in the area, and that having a late night alcohol licence, drinking without food is only going to add to the situation. I can't see, that it's not going to add to it. I'm not saying that they're totally going to be responsible for it all, but they could add to the current situation.
Could it not be argued that, in fact, having managed drinking would take away from that situation? At the moment, you may have stuff brought in off licenses, which is being drunk, and there is no control, because the off license wouldn't have any control over who was drinking and where they were drinking it, whereas a licensed premises would.
So a lot of, if you're buying alcohol from off licenses, I would say that most people would be taking it home and drinking at home, and then wouldn't be walking the streets late at night. I guess the issue here is people will be drinking and then leaving the premises under the influence, and walking home or getting the bus home. And it's that sort of period of time, sort of leaving the restaurant and making their way home, I think that sort of would be an issue.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Ryder-Mills?
No.
Okay. I do have a question, a couple of questions. Again, firstly, I'm finding it difficult to receive this letter and the reported incidents. Having some knowledge of the area, we have within the same proximity of the Laxmi, we have a 24-hour garage that sells alcohol and is open all the time, as far as I know. We have multiple off licenses, and we also have other restaurants. We also have, again, reported locally, quite a high incidence of people sitting on benches and drinking. And, you know, it's also a kind of a transport hub where lots of people are congregating. There's a station nearby, there's bus stations nearby. And so any of those factors could result in some of this crime and disorder. I'm not sure why they're being presented. And especially when you're saying now, is it council policy that every time a licensed premises wants to seek a variation, that we are objecting to them on the grounds of public health? Because this is the first time I've received such an objection from the council on these grounds. You know, we've had multiple applications in the town centre, and the arguments you're making for this application could actually apply. An additional premises will add to the consumption of alcohol. So why are we saying it for this? Do I expect to see these in all future applications going forward?
Yes, councillor. I've been to quite a lot of hearings. Public health has been a responsible authority now for probably the last 3 or 4 years, and I have put in quite a few representations on behalf of Iona and the Director of Public Health in the past.
But what's the criteria? Because I say I've been chair of licensing for the last 2 years, and I've been on most of the subcommittee hearings, and I have seen very, very few objections from your department. So what's the criteria here?
Well, obviously, we can only object under the 4 licensing objectives. So public health doesn't have a health objective, unfortunately. So we can only object under those 4 objectives. And when I looked at this, I just felt that the licensing conditions, drinking without food in a restaurant, I just felt that it would add to the issue already in Tolworth. Okay. So I don't obviously object to it. You know, I do look at it on a case-by-case basis.
And the references to the crime, are you associating those with this applicant?
Yes, under the 2 objectives that I mentioned in my representation, so under the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we now have to hear from the PC Lee Hopkins and also from Genevieve Woods from the Met Police, who will put forward their representations, which again are set out in the appendix A28 to A41. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I'm going to present the representations. PC Hopkins is on the line and is available to assist with questions if needed. Our letter of representations is at A28, I believe, if that assists. In summary, as you've heard, a recent adverse decision in relation to these premises on a very similar basis. Nothing has happened since that decision, which we say should change the outcome. And in fact, there is new adverse information before this committee. And I will be addressing that new adverse information. The fundamental objection is that this premises is not suitable to be a bar, that there are insufficient protections in place, and that due to the history of breaches of licence conditions, there is insufficient confidence, insufficient trust in the premises to comply with any future conditions if a bar licence were to be granted. There are 3 issues I wanted to address. The first is the basis for the decision in October of last year. The second is what has happened since that decision. And the third is the reasons why it's not suitable to be a bar and why there's insufficient confidence that any conditions which were applied would be upheld. In relation to the previous hearing, it's been said that that was a very different application. In fact, it was almost the same. It was an application for a bar licence. and an application to extend the hours of operation. The hours were in fact slightly different, but otherwise it is essentially the same application. The letter which PC Hopkins wrote to the committee on that date is at A33 of your packs, and the decision notice is A36 if that assists. If you look to those documents, you will see there was, prior to that hearing, a history of non-compliance with the conditions and of complaints against the premises. I think it's been said by the applicant it was just one resident campaigning against them, but in fact at that hearing there were 5 sets of representations put forward in response to the consultation. There had been clear breaches of the restaurant license condition. The premises had already been serving alcohol to people without serving a meal, which is a serious breach. In fact, on one occasion in March of last year, a person who was served alcohol without a meal at the premises went on to commit a serious affray in the premises with a large knife, which they brandished and threatened, and in fact, I think struck a person in the premises. There were also complaints about them holding private parties, making noise until 4 a.m., which raised concerns about the ability of the venue to manage noise and prevent further crime and disorder. It's of course important that the committee is consistent, but we would say it would be open to depart from that decision if there were new information which showed there had been substantial changes or an ability to prevent and manage crime and disorder. In fact, the opposite has taken place. There have been 3 important incidents since that decision, which we say indicates that the venue is not able to manage crime and disorder. The first is relatively minor compared to the other 2. It's the issue in relation to the tens, which we've already heard about. There were 11 tens, and they were conducted at the request of PC Hopkins, who spoke with Mr. Suresh, the licensing agent, and said that it was important to demonstrate the noise levels and the risk of crime by holding tens throughout the course of the year, and most importantly during the summer period. The venue then held 11 tens in a period from November to January. I think 1 this year and the rest are in November and December. So in a very short period and only in the winter months. And it's relevant for 2 reasons. Firstly, because it's not an accurate reflection of the levels of noise and outdoor activity which you'd find during the summer months. And it's not a reflection, it indicates that the venue is unwilling to follow through on what has been agreed with the authorities. So they had agreed to do tens during the summer period and then decided not to without further consultation, which goes, of course, to the confidence which the authorities can have in that venue. It is important to see some tens in the summer period to understand what the levels of crime and disorder and the levels of noise would be emanating from that venue, to have an accurate understanding. The second incident is, as you've heard, there was a fight outside the premises on the 9th of November. It was quite a large fight, at least 10 people involved. And although it's been said that the venue was not responsible, it certainly did involve the venue. We know that the violence was conducted using chairs from outside the venue. The resident who described the incident said that some of the people involved were carrying bottles of drinks and some of them were inhaling balloons. Now, obviously, it's a concern in and of itself that this crime and disorder was occurring so close to the venue and involving the venue's property. But the biggest concern for the police is the non-compliance demonstrated by the venue in the aftermath of that incident. The police requested CCTV from the venue within 2 weeks of the incident, quite quickly after the incident. The venue initially provided the wrong CCTV, even though the correct time and date was given. Shortly afterwards, a meeting was held to view the CCTV within the ordinary 31-day period of retention for CCTV. And it was agreed that the CCTV would be viewed at that meeting, but the PLH did not download the video for the meeting. The officer said he would wait, allow them to download the video, and they would watch it. And it was at that stage that the officer was told that the CCTV footage no longer existed, that it had been disposed of. Obviously, it's very important to maintain working CCTV, and particularly footage of major incidents of crime and disorder, and to be able to provide that to the police on request. And to be quite frank, the police are concerned that the venue simply did not want to provide the CCTV, as there were repeated opportunities within that 2-week period for them to do so. As I said earlier, it's been said that this incident wasn't a result of people leaving the premises, But we simply don't know whether that's the case because the CCTV has been withheld from the police. It is also important that the venue is able to manage violence within and immediately outside the premises. Even though their chairs were being used in this incident, they chose not to contact the police at the time, and that is a serious concern. At this stage, the police doesn't have confidence that if future violence were to occur, given what occurred in March of 2019 and November of 2019, that the venue would appropriately manage it, that they would have CCTV in place, that they would provide that CCTV, and that they would call the police and take appropriate measures to ensure safety. The third incident which has occurred since the last hearing was on the 9th of January 2020, when the premises was visited by the Environmental Protection Licensing Officer. On that occasion, it was again found to be breaching its restaurant condition. The email from the officer describing the incident is at A40, and I would urge committee members to read that email. It appears that not only were the premises breaching the restaurant condition on that date, but they also tried to conceal the breach from the licensing officer, so we're clearly aware that it was in breach and tried to hide that fact. And that, coupled with previous breaches of the license, which the committee accepted in October, it's within such a short period of time of that decision. This was on the 9th of January, so within easily 12 weeks of the previous hearing, when the problems with breaching that condition had been aired before the committee. So it's a flagrant, knowing breach of the restaurant condition. The third issue I wish to address is that the venue is simply not suitable to be a bar. The problem, we say, isn't so much that there are no other operating bars in the area. As we've discussed, that can be both a positive and a negative factor. But the venue itself is not physically suitable to be a bar, and the protections, the conditions which have been suggested, are inadequate to manage the increased noise, nuisance, and crime and disorder which would likely flow from changing from being solely a restaurant to becoming a bar. We've heard the applicant say today that this is an application designed for people coming in to do some work, coming in straight after work, to socialise, to have a quick beer, that it's not a bar. In fact, we've heard them say 3 or 4 times, we are not a bar. But if that is correct, then there is no need for a bar licence. People can come in and eat a small meal. If they are there simply to socialise after work, that won't be a barrier. And these aren't the sort of customers for whom the only other option is going to an off-licence to consume enormous amounts of liquor. They can just order a small amount of food to socialise. This is not a barrier. There is a list of reasons set out at A31, which is the letter of PC Hopkins, why we consider that the venue itself is not suitable. For instance, there is no lobby, which would act as a barrier when the front door is open to prevent recorded music coming outside, as the door is repeatedly open and closed. There are other reasons set on that list. I'm not going to go through them for reasons of time, but they are before you, committee members. It is, of course, a matter for the applicant to show what measures would be put in place to prevent noise levels rising too high and to prevent nuisance. But we've had no practical indication from the PLH of how those noise levels will be managed, no indication that they are taking it seriously. No information provided to the police or the committee which we can properly scrutinise. And in fact, the description today of how that will be managed was simply, we'll keep the volume down, which is unenforceable, vague, and doesn't help to protect the residents from noise. Fundamentally, the police are opposing this application because becoming a bar, even a bar that is also a restaurant, creates an increased risk of crime and disorder. And as the premises has repeatedly not complied with the existing conditions and failed to properly manage crime and disorder in the past year, we say we have no confidence that they will appropriately do so in future, and it is not appropriate to grant the requested changes.
Thank you. Is that complete submission now?
Yes,
Great.
thank you, Chair.
And does PC Hopkins wish to add anything, or I can move to questions from councillors?
No, I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gander, would you like to ask the Met Police representatives any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just, you've painted quite a picture, and obviously we have the papers in front of us. If this application hadn't been made, what would the normal course of your relationship, if you like, with the restaurant have been? I mean, clearly there was a licensing visit in January. We might be, we're in the middle of COVID. I'm just wondering what would the next step have been for you?
I will be corrected by PC Hopkins, but my understanding is that there was, prior to this application, already very serious consideration of whether a review of the existing license was required. There had been several failures in the relationship between the police and the premises, in that the premises has not been communicating with police, has not been following through on matters that are agreed with police, for instance, the TENS. And just to give a quick example, we were not aware that there was new management, and the new management has not engaged with the police.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. That's all from me.
Councillor Ryder-Mills, do you have any questions?
When I can find my unmute button, yes. Yes, following on from your last little statement there, by how much would your opinion change just on the change of a manager? I mean, obviously you have no experience of the new manager. We're told that he's successfully managed other premises in the past. How much would your confidence rise simply by having a new manager, or how much experience of that new manager would you need before confidence was regained?
The simple fact of changing to new management doesn't necessarily mean any improvement in a venue. What we would need to see from that new management would be engagement over time, some indication they were taking the restrictions seriously. For instance, with this application, providing sensible practical measures to manage smoking, to manage noise, and to deal with disorder. Those are the sort of things we'd be looking to see, which we haven't seen to date. We would be looking for engagement as well as experience. And I think there would need to be some time elapsing in which that is demonstrated before that is something which the authorities could accept to be the case. In this case, not only has there not been that demonstration of improvement, but there have been recent issues, as you've heard, the most recent of which was in January prior to coronavirus, and there's been no opportunity since at least March to test further whether the venue is complying. The most recent was in January, but given coronavirus, that is a very recent breach. So our concerns remain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, could I just ask a question just for clarification? Since the last application, I mean, you've referenced 3 incidents, which is the, I mean, was the fight near the premises where property was used, but you haven't been able to establish any more facts than that, and a couple of a breach of the license, and I think there was one more. Has there been any other complaints to the police or serious incidents of disturbance or antisocial behaviour other than those that we've been told about today?
As I said, we're really looking at the period from the end of the decision, 22nd of October, up until coronavirus came into play, so a period of several months. I don't have any additional incidents before me. I might turn to PC Hopkins to complete the rest of that answer.
The only,
are you aware of the
if I can speak, Councillor Sweeney, the only other further incident that hasn't been included in my representations, it happened fairly recently, was a CAD was drafted to the police resource systems that the venue was operating at 1 a.m. during lockdown. I'm aware that they're fully entitled to have takeaway systems, but apparently there's some noise generated to this. But I haven't included that into my reps, and I wasn't certainly going to discuss it. But just answering your question directly, that's the only other information that we've had during the lockdown since the application's been submitted.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions for these representatives at this point. Looking to councillors, any other further questions, just in case? No, I don't think so. Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may ask some questions.
Councillor Sweeney, you're on mute.
Sorry. We will come back to the applicant now. I don't believe you're allowed to ask the questions of the other representatives, but you certainly have an opportunity to sum up very shortly. You can do those. So we are now at the stage where excuse me, I've just lost my space. Right, so there are no more submissions, is that correct? Democratic Services now here for the
yes, Chairman. The objector is not joining us in the hearing. Obviously, the submitted written representations are on the agenda. Page 40.
Okay, thank you. So, applicant, now you have a chance. Let's keep it to, say, maybe 5 minutes. Can you just sum up your application and maybe address some of those points that have been made that you'd like to reference for by the other parties that have submitted today? So we'd like to hear from you. You're on mute at the moment, so Control D unmutes you, and please, off you go.
Okay, Chair, I think we heard from the Environmental Health Officer, Richard, and the Public Health Officers. Both of them said that, they don't have any specific evidences against these premises. It's all their concerns. So their representation is made from their concerns and, their feelings. I mean, I heard those words like the feelings and the concerns as opposed to, evidence-based. Okay, so with the police representation, I had a meeting with PC Lee Hopkins, in December, and then we talked about, taking this condition out, and he said, yes, I have no problem with that, So I think you should run like over like a 5 or 6 months, few tens, and then see, and then put in applications, I think we didn't use the word summertimes. I think it's coming, I can remember, and also now we put some tents, when necessary, and then all this coronavirus, this also comes up. So now the police themselves said 3 evidence, one of them is a minor, I think they're saying like engagement, having not confidence, that's not really, fair, I think. Let me tell you why. Because the first incident, knife incidents, the premises had given a CCTV and they were able to handle that matter,
Okay.
And also the other thing I wanted to point out, with this particular evidence, actually the owner of the premises was so upset, he was not able to provide that, CCTV because the CCTV had like a 14 days, that it's not 31 days, it's not kind of a breach of a condition or whatever. But what he did, he immediately, now put like a new management in place and the new CCTV, he invested a time, money in investing money on a new CCTV systems, So I think, Chair, I think it's, I think they are saying like not able to manage it, all this opinion based on one residence, putting these points forward, based on that, a lot of the assessments are made, except those 2 instances, So I think I would request, Chair, I think I'm really, surprised that they are not supporting this business, as opposed to really punishing them, rather look at it, Thank you.
I think I just need to turn to my fellow committee members. Councillors, do you have any questions for the applicant based on the representations made by the other parties?
Just one, if I may. Am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Right. Okay. I'm worried about something which doesn't seem to tally, and that's in relation to the fight outside that's been mentioned. One side is saying this had nothing to do with the restaurant or customers at the restaurant. I've also been told that there's no restaurant furniture outside on the footway, and yet it's alleged that chairs from the restaurant were used during the fight. How can these two tally?
So can I answer that, Councillor? So let me tell you, that fight is not taken place right outside this premises. It started, somewhere else, and they were kind of coming around, and actually they actually messed the chairs out as well, because they have to, it's not in the middle of the road, because there's no evidence. I think the police or the other authorities are basing this from a resident who made the complaints. The thing is, obviously that the chairs was jumbled around, isn't it? They touched them. Yeah, they pushed the chairs while they were like fighting with each other. They just pushed the chairs around because in that area it's happening, and then what happened is they just, move away from that premises straight away. So the premises obviously picked the chairs up and put it back in. It didn't go into the middle of the road. That's totally wrong, and there's no such evidence, here, it goes in the middle of the road. They used the chairs to fight. The chairs was, used by them, not used by in the sense that they just pushed the chairs, because it was like there, the area. That's why they were two groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor, did that answer your question? Do you have any further questions?
Not really. I'm not sure how they got hold of the chairs. Did they come into the restaurant and collect them, or were the chairs inadvertently left out, or what?
So there are chairs and tables outside chair as well. Yeah, it's part of the restaurant. People can sit outside.
Okay, yeah. There's the picture, I think, of the layout, maybe, that I've seen, Councillor. Yeah, so there's about 4 chairs outside, is it? 4 to 6 chairs.
4 chairs.
4 chairs.
Yeah.
Right. I thought I'd been told that there were no chairs outside.
No, I think after 9 p.m. they remove them in because
you bring the chairs in.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gander, do you have some questions?
Yes, thank you. I'm actually wanting to ask about the other 2 incidents. I mentioned earlier that from alcohol without food isn't really a good idea, but what evidence did we have? And of course, the incident of the knife in March 2019 seems to be directly attributable to drinking without food. Now, the incident where the licensing called in January 2020, there was also evidence of drinking without food. Now, this is currently not allowed by your license, and I'm just wondering how you can explain why these breaches are occurring, and why you think it's a good idea moving forward to allow drinking without food.
So, Councillor, that happens, knife one. So the group of people came into the premises, they were sitting down and they ordered a food, but before the food comes, these things happens. So it's not like, they were serving without, food, because they already ordered the food at the time. But before the food coming to delivered, the incident happens, and then all these been sorted with the police, and the premises is really supporting positively. I think the police, I'm really surprised that they don't mention the good thing. because they have given the CCTV to them and they're working together, really supporting to giving all the fact, all those things, right? Because, and it's, the business, they don't want crime, all they want, run a business peacefully, they don't want to have any problems, and trying to, it seems to me like right now, this business is, there to create problems, not to do the business, that's how we are going in there, but right now, we have put so many, we set a system we have, where we're gonna promote the licensing objective, like a prevention of crime and disorder. The new CCTV system is, the conditions are, not existed before. We have now 4 or 5 conditions regarding to CCTV and incident records book, and then we want to work with the police. I think the point about, engagement, I think we did have a meeting with them, is it not an engagement? And then they were providing the CCTV. I think, the one time they were not able to give the CCTV, the owner himself so upset. I'm sure the police can, see that. I was really upset as well, and because the 14 days just passed and the owner didn't realize that, oh dear, the 14 days gone, the CCTV record is not there, right? But right now they invested money to handle that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gander, do you have any further questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question for you. It's regarding the, I think what's coming across in some of the submissions from the responsible authorities is that your ability to work as part of a team with them. So we have, for example, on the 9th of January, you were visited and there's reference to people drinking without food. And then there's a record of an incident where then they were brought food and it's alleged that, that this was all done because you were in breach or you were serving alcohol when you shouldn't be. What do you say to that? Did that incident happen?
So the incident happened on the 8th of January.
I don't know. I'm not there at that time.
Incident happens. So, Chair, I think we are not aware of things, anything like that happen. I'm not sure how the police got the information from where.
Sorry, no. Rebecca Welton visited the premises on the 9th of January. You had a sign saying alcohol could only be sold when accompanied by food. She saw people drinking without food. And then somebody went into the kitchen and then food appeared at the table of the people who were drinking. So I'm asking you, did that incident happen or not happen?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was something we were discussing. I think there was, so the owner and the premises license holder were not present at that times. Obviously, the staff were serving alcohol to these customers. And they were going to order a food, I mean, there was a difficult situation where people come to order drinks first and they start ringing and then they take an order of the food, I think on that day, at this particular customers, they had a drink and then they will keep ringing, until they make a decision to order a food, so that's one of the problem, we don't want those things to happen, I mean, like having those options, that's one of the reason, we are putting this application so we don't come across, those kind of issues where there's some customers, wanted to have a, like a flexibility, not forcing them to make an, food first or drinks first or whatever that is, so I think what we can assure you, the committee, it will not happen again, those kind of issues. Because the new manager, who got 5 years experience managing those premises, and we're going to have a new operating schedule as well to support those things like that not occurring.
Okay. Again, with reference to the police concerns, one, the ability to, they have requested CCTV footage. It didn't come to them. Also, they're saying that they're not aware that you have a new manager in place, or that you're not maybe communicating with them enough. Are you agreeing with those comments, or do you think there's room for improvement?
Chair, I think there is always room for improvement. As you can see, the new applications and the new management is an improvement. You know, it's so much new improvements. But let me come back to that CCTV things. I mean, obviously we are upset, and the police is upset as well. But at the same time, Chair, you know, because that's how the system worked. I think the police, when we don't give CCTV, you know, when the applicant didn't give the CCTV, you know, or the license holder, you know, the police, assuming they don't want to give, that's why they didn't give. You know, that's not the real reason. It's just, you know, the system had a 14 days record, and that's what that is the fact. And they went down and making it mean about, you know, that they are not engaging, they are not managing the premises properly. Not like that. It's just the system, you know. But now we have upgraded the system, you know, you know, I mean, it's just only one time it happens, you know. If they look at the previous incident, they have given the CCTV and they provided that, they supported that, you know.
Okay.
But at the moment.
Fine. Again, the point about, you know, your manager's relationship with the police.
Let me tell you, Chair, okay, thank you. Look, I mean, whenever the management changes, right? So there is a process we do. We fill out an application, a designated premises supervisor change, you know, where, you know, the police get the informations, you know, through the licensing authority. I think they get informed and they check their personal records and things like that. So it's automatically done through the paper-based system. I think it's not like we didn't want to do it. I mean, the applicant, you know, they didn't want to do it. I mean, they didn't think, you know, because all they wanted to do, manage these premises, you know, effectively going forward. And then if there's any problem, you know, they will contact the police. You know, that's what system in place.
Okay, thank you. So I would just like, as applicants, would you like to make just one final closing remark before we bring this part of the proceedings to an end?
Yeah, I want to say something, because I've trained all the staff and I give the proper training. Hopefully, I will copy the police and everything, whatever rules are following.
And you have an incident record book.
Yeah, I have an incident record books in the system at the moment. Any complaint, I will write it down. I will call the number and I will ask them how is going on, how is improvement.
Okay, so you're promising to try harder. Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Well, thank you. That concludes the public hearing. We have a lot of information to go through now. The subcommittee members, the legal officer and the clerk will now withdraw to a private meeting area while the subcommittee makes its decision. That decision will be confirmed to all parties by email today. Do I need to...
Sorry, Chair, I was just wondering if there are any final statements from any of the responsible authorities before we finish.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't realise that was part of the procedure. Is that... Okay, so what the responsible authorities can ask questions, or what can they do? Sorry, please advise.
Mr. You can hear me. Guy Byron speaking. I mean, on the procedure that's been set out at the meeting, gone through the processes with the responsible authorities making their representations and questions from members of the committee. We've gone through that process through to the final statement from the applicant. So there isn't a final statement stage for each of the responsible authorities to make at this part of the proceedings.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So I'm okay to close the meeting, am I?
I'd say yes.
Okay, great, thank you. As I was saying, that decision, we're going to make a decision today. All parties will be informed by email, so you don't have to hang around. And then there will be a written decision that will be sent to all parties within 5 working days. So I will now ask the subcommittee members to go into the private meeting session without further comment. And I thank everyone for their time and submissions and efforts this morning. And I can confirm that this meeting and the live stream will end now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.